Emily Parker found the lease agreement on a rainy afternoon. In the unfinished kitchen of the house she had once called the final dream of her life. Rain fell steadily outside the windows, still streaked with construction dust, tapping against the newly repaired porch roof in a thin, cold rhythm. The living room hardwood had not yet been fully polished. On the wall were still patches of test paint, 3 different shades of beige Ryan had once said he could not tell apart. But as long as you like it, I like it. In the middle of the kitchen lay the design plan for the kitchen island she had revised over and over for 6 months, with pencil notes along the edge. Add an outlet on the left. Lighter countertop, leave space for 2 bar stools. The temporary faucet over the sink kept dripping into a plastic bucket because the plumber had promised to come back the next day. The whole house smelled of new wood, paint dust, adhesive, and a kind of exhausted hope that Emily had poured almost all her money, time, and strength into. She was sorting through financial documents to prepare for a meeting with the bank the next morning. Mortgage statements, contractor invoices, kitchen renovation estimates, statements for the temporary loan from her 401k, homeowner's insurance papers, renovation permits, deposit receipts. Dry, lifeless things that 2 years earlier she had believed would become proof of adulthood, stability, and the fact that she and Ryan would finally no longer be living in temporary rented apartments, no longer hanging pictures with cheap adhesive hooks because they were afraid of losing their deposit, no longer saying, one day, every tea. They passed houses with white porches and backyards wide enough for a fire pit. The envelope had been tucked between the mortgage file and a cabinet quote. It was ivory white, with no bank logo, not an envelope from the insurance company or the contractor. At first, Emily thought it was just paperwork misplaced by mistake. Maybe a furniture delivery receipt or a lighting invoice Ryan had said he ordered for her. She opened it with the absent-mindedness of someone far too used to paperwork. Then her world stopped, not with an explosion, not with the sound of breaking glass, but with an absolute silence spreading out from the first line. Residential lease agreement. The apartment address was downtown, in a luxury building she had seen advertised online, but had never imagined she would have any reason to enter. Primary tenant, Natalie Reed. Co-signer, Ryan Parker. Her husband's name was there. Clear, legal, cold, printed in a font that knew no shame. Emily stood in the unfinished kitchen, the paper in her hand, the sound of rain and dripping water in her ears. She read on: security deposit, 12-month lease term, electronic signature, lease start date, and it was that date that sent a chill down her back, as if someone had opened a door behind her. Ryan and Natalie's apartment lease had begun 3 weeks before the day she and Ryan put down the deposit on this house. For the first few seconds, Emily did not understand what she was looking at, not because the words were difficult. She was an office manager and part-time bookkeeper for a large dental clinic, and she had spent her whole life among invoices, payroll, insurance contracts, and numbers that had no mercy. She understood very well what a lease was. She understood what a cosigner was. She understood what financial responsibility meant. It was precisely because she understood too well that her mind tried to refuse it. Maybe Ryan had helped a coworker rent an apartment because she did not have good enough credit. Maybe this was a work matter. Maybe Natalie was part of some project. Maybe there was an explanation she did not yet know. But the more she read, the more she looked at the downtown address, the deposit amount, Ryan's signature, and the lease start date, the more every decent explanation slipped out of her hands like wet paper. Ryan was not only listed on another apartment, he had signed for it before he and Emily had even finished buying their dream house, which meant that while Emily was cutting every expense, working overtime, postponing a trip to visit her mother, selling the gold ring her grandmother had left her because she thought, "I don't wear it anyway," and convincing herself that every sacrifice meant something because they were building a future, Ryan already had another future being signed under his name downtown. She did not cry. That frightened her. She had always thought that if she ever found out her husband had betrayed her, she would scream, shake, throw something, call him immediately, and force him to hear her breaking over the phone. But she only stood motionless, one hand resting on the unfinished kitchen countertop, the other holding the lease. The new countertop was still covered with a fine layer of dust. When she lifted her handprint appeared clearly in the dust, small and alone. She remembered all the times Ryan had stood in this kitchen, laughing as he talked about where they would put the coffee machine, where they would keep the fruit bowl, where they would host their first Thanksgiving. "This is going to be our home," he had said, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind, his chin on her shoulder, his voice warm enough to make all her exhaustion feel worthwhile. Our home, their home, now in her hand, was a piece of paper saying he already had another home, or at least another place important enough for him to sign his name to. 2 years earlier, that dream had begun very normally, even beautifully in the ordinary way people often mistake for lasting happiness. Emily and Ryan had been married for 14 years and had no children, partly because in the early years they had been too busy paying off student loans and building careers, and partly because after 2 early miscarriages, Emily had learned to put her grief into practical things instead. A house became the dream that replaced the things that had not come true. She never said that to anyone, but in her heart, the house was not just a place to live. It was proof that their life could still give birth to something shared, something solid, something with walls, a roof, a backyard, and an address where people could send Christmas cards. On weekends, they drove through suburbs, holding coffee in paper cups, touring open houses like couples in bank advertisements. Ryan liked houses with spacious garages and bright home offices. Emily liked bright kitchens, large windows, and a back porch wide enough for pots of basil, rosemary, and 2 wooden chairs. He would often stand in the middle of those living rooms, arms open as if imagining his life expand. "Imagine it," he said. "Sunday morning's coffee, no upstairs neighbors stomping around. No landlord raising rent every year. Just us, something we actually own." Emily looked at him then and loved him again in an old way, because Ryan always knew how to speak directly to the tired places inside her. She was tired of renting, tired of temporary, tired of living as if everything could be taken back after 30 days' notice. The housing market had no mercy. Prices rose, interest rates crept up. The houses they liked were all beyond their budget, and the ones they could afford were either too far from work or needed too much renovation. Emily began living like someone walking through a tunnel, seeing only a small point of light at the end. She built spreadsheets, cut dining out, canceled her gym membership, started trimming her own bangs, brought lunch to work, and took on extra month-end bookkeeping for the clinic. Ryan said he was trying too. He said his commissions at the commercial equipment company would improve once the new project closed. He said soon, "We're close, just a little more." But whenever the conversation turned to specific numbers, he would smile, kiss her temple, and say, "You're better with numbers than I am. Just tell me what I need to do." That sentence had once made her feel trusted. Later, when she looked back, she realized there are people who hand you control not because they respect you, but because they want you to be responsible for the whole ship while they quietly climb into another boat. Ryan was not the kind of clumsy man who was easy to hate. On the contrary, he was dangerous because he knew exactly when to be gentle. When Emily sat at the old kitchen table at midnight, her eyes dry from staring at the down payment spreadsheet, Ryan would come up behind her, place his hands on her shoulders, squeeze softly, and say, "I know you're carrying a lot, but I'm doing all of this for us. You're the heart of this family, Em. Without you, I wouldn't even know where to start." She would lean her cheek against his hand, exhausted but softened. He would not sit down with her for very long, would not open the accounts, would not offer clearer proof of contribution. But those words were like a warm towel laid across the shoulders of someone freezing. Emily mistook that warmth for presence. She mistook praise for partnership. She mistook the fact that he knew. She was tired for the idea that he was willing to carry some part of that tiredness. When she asked, "Are you sure we're really doing this together?" Ryan would pull back slightly, not angry right away, but wounded first, as if she had damaged something sacred. "You really doubt me, after everything I'm trying to do for us?" That was all it took for Emily to feel she had been too harsh. She would apologize. She would say she was just tired. He would hold her and say, "I know, babe. We're almost there, almost there." That sentence pulled her through so many sleepless nights. The house they managed to buy sat at the end of a quiet road, lined with maple trees on both sides. It was not perfect. The exterior paint had faded, the kitchen was old, the floors needed refinishing, the main bathroom had cracked tile, and the backyard was bare and slightly sloped. The first time Emily stepped inside, afternoon light poured through the dining room windows and made the dust in the air look like fine gold. She stood there listening to the realtor talk about potential, hearing Ryan whisper, "This is it," and she believed. In her mind, she saw the kitchen island, the cream-colored sofa, the bookshelves beside the fireplace, a long table for dinners they had never had enough space to host before. She saw her mother flying in from Arizona, sitting on the porch with tea. She saw Ryan grilling in the backyard. She saw a version of herself who no longer checked her bank account every morning with a tightening in her chest. The day the bank approved the loan, Emily cried right there on the front porch, embarrassed as she wiped her tears with her sleeve. Ryan held her, laughed loudly, and told the realtor, "We did it." We. Us. In the photo the realtor took, Ryan stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders, his smile wide and proud. No one looking at that photo would know that most of the down payment came from Emily's personal savings, her work bonus, the loan she took from her 401k, and money she had gathered by turning her own life into a chart of reductions. Ryan wanted both their names on the house documents. When Emily cautiously said that because her initial contribution was larger, maybe they should ask a lawyer how to record things clearly, his face darkened in a very wounded way. "I don't want to feel like a guest in my own marriage," he said. "If you really believe we're one, why does this need to be divided?" Emily hated herself for making him feel insulted. She sighed. She told herself marriage was not a balance sheet. She told herself love did not count every dollar. Later, sitting in front of a lawyer with a thick stack of documents, she finally understood that Ryan only hated accounting when she was the one doing it. When it came to his rights, he remembered them very clearly. Right after closing day, Ryan said he had to leave for a 2-day business trip because a major client was having a problem. Emily stayed alone in the empty house, holding the new keys in her hand, walking through each room like someone inspecting the future. She placed her palm against the living room wall. She opened the primary bedroom window and let the autumn air rush in. She stood in the old kitchen, where the yellowed wooden cabinets had loose handles, and laughed to herself because she imagined that one day they would tell this phase like a cute memory. "Remember when we first bought the house and the kitchen was awful?" She did not know Ryan had not left the city at all. She did not know that same evening his credit card was swiped at a downtown bar. Then at the parking garage near the apartment building she would later learn was where Natalie Reed lived. She did not know she was standing inside their house while he was trying another door with another key. The renovation months exhausted Emily in a silent way. She left the clinic at 5:30, stopped by Home Depot to buy more tape, paint trays, light bulbs, screws, tile samples, then drove to the new house instead of going back to their old apartment. She wore old t-shirts, tied her hair up, and painted walls late into the night. Some nights she fell asleep on the living room floor and woke close to 1 in the morning with an aching back and a cold phone in her hand. Ryan texted, "Looks great, babe. Proud of you," a heart emoji attached. He said he was stuck in meetings, stuck with clients, helping a coworker move, going to the gym to clear his head because of financial stress. She believed most of it. The part she did not believe, she drowned in work. The truth was, the more labor she poured into the house, the more she needed to believe it was worth. Every layer of paint was another layer of commitment. Every invoice was a vow. Every time her wrist hurt, every time her knees bruised from kneeling to measure the floor, she felt she had gone too far to turn back toward doubt. The small warning signs appeared like hairline cracks in freshly painted walls. Once she found an unfamiliar perfume in Ryan's car. Not a cheap, overpowering scent, but something clean, cold, with a hint of cedarwood. The kind of scent worn by a woman who knew exactly what she wanted people to remember about her. On the passenger seat was a parking garage receipt downtown, dated Thursday at 9:43 p.m., while Ryan had said he was having dinner with a client on the north side of town. When Emily asked, he said he had driven a coworker to lunch the next day and forgotten to throw out the old receipt. "Are you checking my car now?" he asked, not very angry, just wounded enough. Emily immediately backed down. "No, I was just cleaning the car." He sighed and rubbed his face, as if exhausted from being misunderstood. I know everything is stressful right now, but if we start doubting each other over random receipts, what do we have left?" She apologized. But when he went to shower, she took a photo of the receipt. It was the first time she kept a piece of evidence that she herself did not yet want to call evidence. Natalie Reed did not first enter Emily's life as an enemy. She appeared through pieces too ordinary to accuse. A work email Ryan accidentally left open on his laptop, with the line, "Nat will send the revised numbers." A group text about team dinner. A LinkedIn comment under Ryan's post about a new project. "Always making impossible things look easy." One time Ryan mentioned, "Nat from accounting thinks we should restructure the client package," in a voice so natural it sounded as if Natalie had existed in their life for a long time, and Emily was the one failing to catch up. When Emily asked, "You've been mentioning her more than before," Ryan looked at her over his morning coffee and smiled lightly. Because she's on the project. Do you want me to stop talking about work altogether? She shook her head, her face growing warm. He came over and kissed her hair. You're cute when you're jealous, but don't torture yourself. I'm trying to make money for this house, remember? The sentence was both sweet and sharp. It placed her suspicion in the position of obstructing their shared dream. And Emily, standing among boxes of tile, invoices, and loans, did not want to be the one who ruined the dream. Once, Ryan video called from a business trip in Philadelphia. He stood in a room with a gray wall and warm lighting. He said the hotel was terrible. He was tired, he missed home. Emily was sitting on the floor of the new house, opening a box of cabinet handles that had just been delivered, dust in her hair. As he tilted the phone, she glimpsed a cream-colored women's coat on the chair behind him. The kind of long coat Emily would never wear because she always spilled coffee. She saw it, then scolded herself. Hotels could have items left by previous guests. It could have been a coworker's coat in a meeting room. Maybe she had seen wrong. When she asked, "Are you alone?" Ryan laughed, but the laugh did not reach his eyes. "Do you want me to turn the camera around and check under the bed too?" She felt ashamed. He softened his voice immediately after. I know you're tired. The house is stressing you out, but don't let it turn you into someone else." After the call, Emily sat among the cabinet handles, feeling as if she had been caught doing something wrong, even though the only person lying might not have been her. So when she found the lease, those small pieces were no longer scattered. They fit together with the cruelty of numbers that were correct. The downtown parking garage near the apartment building. The temporary housing fee from the joint account that Ryan had said was to hold a contractor. The furniture invoices for items that never appeared in this house. Natalie's name. The cream-colored coat. The perfume. Nat from accounting. Emily sat down on the folding chair in the kitchen because her knees no longer felt steady. She read the lease a second time, then a third. She did not call Ryan, did not text him, did not take a picture and send it with, "What is this?" The first instinct of someone betrayed is to drag the betrayer into the room at once, to force them to see the pain. But the bookkeeper part of Emily, the part that had saved her through so many tight budgets, whispered that if she called now, he would have time to build a lie, delete accounts, change passwords, turn her into a frantic wife who misunderstood paperwork. She needed to know everything, not one piece, everything. That night, Ryan came home close to 8, carrying a box of Thai takeout, and the easy smile of a man who believed everything was still where it belonged. Emily had hidden the lease in her tote bag under the car seat. The house was still unfinished, so they ate at the folding table in the kitchen, beside paint cans and backsplash samples. Ryan opened the pad thai, frowned because there were no chopsticks, then laughed. "One day we're going to tell people our first dinner in the dream house was cold takeout on a folding table." Emily watched him use the words dream house, and felt something inside her chest fall without ever hitting bottom. "I think when it's done, this place is really going to feel like ours," Ryan said, scooping food onto a paper plate. Emily placed her hand around her glass of water. "Ours?" Ryan looked up, paused for a second, then smiled. "Yeah, you know what I mean." She looked around. Walls she had painted, tiles she had chosen, invoices she had paid, loans she had carried, and another lease he had signed with another woman. "I know," she said. Her voice was so calm it sounded strange even to her. Ryan did not notice. He started talking about how maybe they should change the pendant lights over the island because Nat at the office says warm white lighting makes a kitchen look more expensive. He stopped immediately after saying Nat, but it was too late. Emily looked at him. He chewed slowly, then said, "Natalie. She renovated her apartment, so she knows about that stuff." Apartment. The word dropped between them. Ryan immediately drank water. "I mean the apartment she rents. You know downtown people are into decor." Emily nodded. She did not ask, not because it did not hurt, but because she had just seen more clearly that Ryan still believed she knew nothing, and that overconfidence would keep making him careless. When Ryan went upstairs to shower, his phone lit up on the kitchen counter. Emily stood 2 steps away. She did not touch it. She only looked. A message appeared on the lock screen from Natalie. Did she sign the contractor payment yet? The kitchen seemed to tilt. Not "are you coming?" Not "miss you?" Not a romantic message that would hurt in a way she could understand. Money, contractor payment. Natalie knew about the renovation payment. Knew there was a she. Knew Emily was signing. Emily heard water running in the upstairs bathroom. She picked up her own phone and quickly photographed Ryan's screen from a distance, clear enough to capture the message, the time, and the sender's name. Then she set her phone down and kept clearing away the takeout containers, as if her life had not just stepped into a darker room. In the days that followed, Emily became two people. By day, she was still the woman who went to work, answered phones at the clinic, handled insurance complaints, checked appointment schedules, reminded new staff to enter the correct procedure code. By evening, she still went through the dream house, spoke to workers, checked progress, chose cabinet handles, texted Ryan that the electrician needed confirmation on light placement. But when night came and Ryan slept, she sat at the kitchen table of the old apartment or on the floor of the new house, opened her laptop, and went through every account like someone digging up a grave. Contractor deposit on March 14, no matching invoice. 2 days later, Ryan's card paid nearly the same amount to a luxury furniture store delivering to a downtown zip code. Temporary storage fee on April 2. She called the storage company Ryan said he had booked. They had no record under the name Parker. That same week, Natalie posted a public story, only 12 seconds long, panning across a corner of a living room with a brass arc floor lamp. The exact model Ryan had said had been delivered wrong and was waiting to be exchanged. Emily watched that story 3 times, not to torture herself, to be sure. On the table beside the lamp was a glass of whiskey with 1 large ice cube, the kind Ryan always called proper ice. On the back of the chair was Ryan's navy jacket, the one he had said he left at the gym. The more she found, the more she saw that their shared dream had been used as a wallet, not only a secret affair built from dinners and hotel. This was a system. Ryan had taken the kinds of payments Emily would not question because they were labeled house. The house needed repairs. The house needed lighting. The house needed cabinet deposits. The house needed holding fees. The house needed fast payments, so they would not lose the contractor. Every time Emily worked an extra weekend, every time she did not buy new boots even though the old ones had peeling soles, every time she told her mother she could not come to Arizona that year because plane tickets were too expensive, some part of that effort may have flowed into Natalie's apartment. Emily did not throw up right away. The nausea came quietly, like a slow wave. One night she stood in front of the sink in the new house, watching water drip into the bucket, and imagined Natalie turning on the brass arc lamp in her downtown living room, sitting beneath light Emily had paid for with her overtime hours. That was when she had to grip the edge of the sink to keep from collapsing. She researched Natalie not with hysterical jealousy, but with the precision of someone who knew public information could still say a great deal. Natalie Reed, 33, financial analyst at a consulting firm connected to Ryan's company. Dark blonde hair, confident smile, photos at rooftop bars, gyms, small galleries, captions like building something real, new beginnings. Home feels different when it's chosen. Emily stared at those lines until the words blurred. Home feels different when it's chosen. She wanted to believe Natalie did not know Ryan had a wife. Wanted to believe she had been fooled by some story about separation, by a man skilled at playing the victim. But then she found an old comment under a semi-public post Ryan had made, a photo of the front porch of the dream house on the day they got the keys. Ryan had written, "Big step, grateful for what we're building." Natalie had commented, "Must be nice to have someone else build it first." No emoji. No clear sign it was a joke. Just one cutting sentence, hidden among congratulations. Ryan had liked the comment. Emily looked at the small heart beside her husband's name, and the anger inside her was no longer hot. It was cold, very cold. Natalie knew. She did not just know Emily existed. She knew Emily was building, and she stood outside watching, as if Emily's sacrifice were merely a preparation stage for the life Ryan had promised her. Emily decided to go to the downtown apartment on a Thursday night, when Ryan said he had a late client meeting. She did not go impulsively. Her phone was fully charged, and she sent her location to Sarah, her best friend from college, with a short message. "If I don't text in an hour, call me." Sarah knew part of the story, did not ask too much, and only replied, "I'm here." The apartment building was called the Meridian, with a glass lobby, bright marble, a concierge in a BL suit, and lights hanging like expensive drops of water. It was cruelly opposite to Emily's dream house, where the staircase was still covered with protective paper, where she wiped paint dust from windows with old towels, where she sat on a toolbox eating cold sandwiches. Emily parked at the coffee shop across the street, chose a table by the window, and ordered a tea she did not drink. She waited 40 minutes. Then Ryan appeared, coming out of the underground parking garage, holding a bag of Japanese takeout and a small bouquet wrapped in brown paper. He did not look like a man going to meet a client. He looked like someone coming home after work, a little tired, a little rushed, but certain the place he was about to enter would open for him. Natalie appeared at the lobby doors before he could even ring. She wore a cream sweater, her hair loosely tied back, slippers on her feet. She smiled when she saw the flowers. Ryan placed his hand on her back as they walked into the elevator. That gesture hurt Emily more than a kiss could have, because it was not a gesture of hurried lust. It was the gesture of habit, of ordinary intimacy, of another version of a husband, somewhere else. Emily raised her phone and took a photo through the coffee shop window, her hand steady enough to capture Ryan's face, the flowers, the lobby entrance, and the Meridian logo behind him. Just as she lowered the phone, Ryan turned and looked toward the street. Not directly at her, but enough to make her heart pound. She bent down and pretended to pick up her bag. 2 minutes later, Ryan appeared in the lobby again, probably to get something from his car. He walked along the opposite side of the street from the coffee shop, phone pressed to his ear. Emily sat low in her chair, barely breathing. Her phone accidentally slipped from her coat pocket and hit the wooden floor with a small clack. Of course, Ryan could not hear it through glass and rain, but to her, the sound was like a gunshot. He stood near his car, not far from the coffee shop, speaking into the phone. His voice was not very loud, but when you know someone too well, you can almost hear certain words just by watching their mouth move. Then he turned his back, and because the cafe door opened as another customer entered, a few sentences slipped through with the cold wind. "Don't worry," Ryan said. "She still thinks the renovation is draining the account." Emily sat motionless. Her renovation account. There was no metaphor left, no misunderstanding left. She was not a suspicious wife following her husband. She was a woman who had just heard the man she loved confirm that he was using her trust like a budget. That night, Emily went back to the new house, not the old apartment. She turned on every light in the kitchen, even though the temporary bulbs hanging from wires looked harsh and cold. On the folding table, she laid out the lease, the photo of Ryan at the Meridian bank statements, the parking receipt, screenshots of Natalie's story, and the photo of the text that said, "Did she sign the contractor payment yet?" She began building a timeline. Not a list of feelings, but a map of guilt. The day Ryan first mentioned Natalie. The day the lease began. The day they put the deposit on the dream house. The day the temporary housing fee left the joint account. The day the wrongly delivered lamp appeared in Natalie's apartment. The day Ryan said he was on a business trip but parked downtown. The day Natalie commented. The day Ryan asked Emily to sign the contractor payment. She backed everything up onto a hard drive, a private email, and a cloud account they did not share. Looking at those dates lined up, she no longer saw herself inside a marriage. She saw a fraud case with a new kitchen, painted walls, and anniversary photos. The next morning, she called a lawyer, not the divorce lawyer she had once imagined during marital nightmares, but a woman named Marjorie Bell, recommended by Sarah, who specialized in marital property and financial disputes. Marjorie's office was on the 3rd floor of a low building, its windows looking out over a gray parking lot and leafless trees. Emily brought a thick folder. When she placed it on the desk, her hands finally began to shake. Marjorie did not rush her. She was around 55, with black hair streaked with gray, thin glasses, and a voice that was dry but not cold. She read the lease first, then the statements, then the timeline. When she reached Natalie's message, she looked up. "You haven't confronted him?" Emily shook her head. "Good," Marjorie said. "Don't do that until we have copies of everything, and do not leave the house if you want to protect your rights in it." Emily swallowed. "The house is in both our names." "Yes, but the source of funds, separate contributions, misdirected transfers, intent to refinance, all of that matters. He could say you abandoned the home, abandoned the project, no longer wanted to continue. People like this are often very good at turning a victim's reaction into evidence." Emily looked down at her hands. Paint was still under her nails, even though she had washed them many times. "I don't want to turn my life into a legal file." Marjorie looked at her for a little longer. "I understand, but it looks like he turned your life into a financial file first." That sentence followed Emily home. It did not make her strong immediately. It only made her clearer. In the days that followed, Ryan became unusually tender. He brought coffee to the clinic, texted to ask whether she had eaten lunch, stopped by the dream house with a bottle of wine, and said he wanted to celebrate how close we are. By then, the house was closer to finished. Cabinets were installed. The bright countertop reflected the temporary light, and the living room had been painted the warm beige Emily chose after 3 tries. Ryan stood in the kitchen, opened the wine, and smiled like a husband in a mortgage commercial. "I have an idea," he said. "If we open a home equity line or do a light refinance, we could finish the backyard exactly the way you want it. The kitchen could get the better backsplash, new sofa, maybe even built-ins around the fireplace." Emily held the glass of wine but did not drink. "More debt, an investment in our property." He stepped behind her and placed his hands on her shoulders. Once that gesture would have softened her. Now it made her skin tighten. "This is for our future," he said. Emily looked at their reflection in the kitchen countertop. Ryan stood behind her, handsome, calm, his hands placed as if he owned her. "Which future, Ryan?" she asked. He froze. "What?" I said, "which future?" He laughed, but his eyes were cautious. "Our future. What's going on with you?" "Nothing. I just want to read the paperwork carefully." Ryan exhaled, slightly annoyed but still keeping his voice gentle. "You always read carefully. That's why I love you." That had once been a compliment. Now it sounded like a confession. He loved her carefulness when it served him. That night, Emily sent the entire refinance packet Ryan had given her to Marjorie. The next morning, the lawyer replied, "Do not sign. This is dangerous. We need to act first." Emily read the email in the clinic parking lot, rain hitting the windshield. She rested her forehead against the steering wheel for a while. She had lived for months stretched tight as a wire. But the line, "Do not sign," made everything real in a way she could no longer step back from. If she did not sign, Ryan would know something had changed. If she signed, she could be opening the way for him to draw more equity from the house she had paid for, with a lifetime of saving. She remembered Natalie's message. Did she sign the contractor payment yet? And she understood the plan did not end with what had already been taken. Ryan and Natalie were still waiting for her to sign their next future. Ryan decided to host a gathering at the Dream House on the last Saturday of the month. He said they needed to celebrate, needed to bring good energy into the house, needed to let both families and a few close friends see the result after so many exhausting months. Emily knew he wanted a stage. Ryan had always loved moments when other people were looking at the best version of him. He wanted to stand under the warm lights in the nearly finished house, raise a glass, and speak about love, teamwork, perseverance. He wanted to turn the house into proof that he was the husband who had built something. Emily agreed, not because she wanted to keep performing, but because he had chosen the stage, and she would finally let the audience see behind the backdrop. She prepared very carefully, not like a wife hosting a housewarming party, but like someone preparing for a hearing in the kitchen she had painted herself. She asked her mother to fly in from Arizona, saying very little but enough for her mother to understand she needed to be there. She invited Sarah. She did not invite Marjorie, because the lawyer advised her not to turn it into a public legal threat. But every file had already been safely copied and submitted. She printed a thin packet, not thick enough to be called crazy, but precise enough that it could not be denied. The lease, bank statements, timeline, photos, receipts, screenshot of Natalie's comment, the contractor payment message, an email from the furniture company confirming delivery to the Meridian. She placed all of it into a brown envelope and hid it in the drawer of the newly installed kitchen island. At the same time, she still arranged flowers, wiped the countertop, set out a cheese plate, toasted bread, as if her hands could do two things at once: tend to a party and bury a marriage. That night, the house lit up so beautifully it hurt. The new pendant lights over the kitchen island cast a soft golden glow. The living room walls were even and smooth. The unused fireplace had been cleaned. Outside in the backyard, the string lights Ryan had bought hung temporarily between two porch posts, trembling slightly in the wind. Ryan's mother, Diane, arrived with a bottle of champagne and a proud smile. She hugged Ryan first, then Emily, saying, "The house is beautiful. You two really did it, did it?" Emily smiled. Her own mother, Linda, stood beside her and placed a very light hand on her daughter's back without saying anything. Sarah looked at Emily from across the kitchen, her eyes asking a question without words. Emily gave the smallest nod. Friends arrived. Ryan's co-workers arrived. A few future neighbors stopped by. Everyone praised the kitchen, the paint color, the perseverance. Ryan moved between groups like a perfect host, telling the story of how he and Emily had searched for houses, how hard the market had been, how exhausting the renovation was. He said, we saved, we planned, we painted, we almost gave up. Emily stood beside the sink, holding a glass of water, hearing every word as if someone were reading her diary aloud after changing the author's name. Around 9, Ryan tapped lightly on his glass and called everyone into the living room. He stood near the fireplace, Beneath the wall, Emily had painted in 2 coats one night until her shoulder hurt for 3 days. He raised his champagne glass. "I just want to say a few words," he began. "This house is not just wood and tile and bank paperwork. It's proof of love, of teamwork, of what 2 people can build when they trust each other enough." Diane wiped the corner of her eye. One of Ryan's friends clapped him on the shoulder. Emily set her glass down on the countertop. It was a small sound, but she heard it clearly. Ryan looked at her, smiled, and reached a hand toward her. Come here. This house is proof of what love and teamwork can build." Emily stepped forward, but she did not stand under his arm. She stood beside the kitchen island, where the envelope sat inside the drawer, and said in a voice calm enough to make the whole room go still, "No, this house is proof of what one person can build while the other is building something else." Ryan laughed at first, as if she had made an awkward joke. "Babe, don't call me that." His smile partly died. The atmosphere in the room changed immediately. Small laugh stopped. Diane frowned. "Emily, what's going on?" Emily opened the drawer and took out the envelope. She did not look at her mother-in-law. She placed the downtown apartment lease on the island in front of Ryan. "I found this in the mortgage files." Ryan looked down. For 1 second, the color drained from his face. Someone who did not know the truth might have thought he was shocked by a misunderstanding. Emily knew it was the moment an actor forgot his lines. "It's not what it looks like," he said. She nodded, as if she had been waiting for that exact sentence. "Then explain the dates." He did not answer at once. People began looking at one another. Diane stepped closer and skimmed the first page. "Ryan," her voice sharpened. Ryan set his glass down. "This is private between me and my wife." Emily pulled out the next page. "Not exactly, because part of my separate money from the joint account, and money meant for this house went into an apartment under the names Ryan Parker and Natalie Reed." Someone inhaled sharply. Ryan turned to her, his voice low. "What are you doing?" "What you always told me to do. Being clear about the finances." She laid down a bank statement. "This is the temporary housing fee you said was for a contractor. No contractor received it. This is the lamp invoice delivered to the Meridian. That lamp was never here, but it appears in a photo of Natalie's apartment. This is the downtown parking garage. The same address I once asked about, and you told me was an old receipt. This is the lease that began 3 weeks before we put the deposit on this house. And this is Natalie asking you, did she sign the contractor payment yet?" Diane looked at Ryan. One of Ryan's friends, Mark, murmured, "Jesus." Ryan lifted one hand as if trying to stop the whole room. "You don't understand the context. Natalie is a coworker. She was having financial trouble. I helped co-sign because..." Emily placed another photo on the table. Ryan walking into the Meridian with takeout and flowers. "Because flowers and sushi are part of financial support." Ryan turned toward her, his eyes darkening. "You followed me. You defrauded me with my own money, Ryan. Don't pretend this is a story about privacy." Diane placed a hand on her chest. "Emily, you should calm down. Bringing this up in front of everyone. In front of everyone is where Ryan likes saying, we built this together the most, so I think everyone should know what we included." Emily's mother stood still, her face pale but her eyes fixed on her daughter. Sarah took out her phone, not recording, only ready if needed. Ryan changed his tone, no longer gentle, no longer wounded. Now he was a man cornered, who still believed he could bite his way out. "You want to humiliate me? Fine, but you should also tell everyone that you controlled every dollar, every decision, every paint color. You made me feel like I had no place in my own marriage. Natalie listened to me. She didn't make me feel useless." Emily looked at him, and in that moment she saw the entire strategy open like a blueprint. He would turn fraud into loneliness, turn diverted money into a need for respect, turn the woman who had paid into the controlling one, because she dared to know where the money went. "You didn't feel useless when your name was on the deed to the house I paid most of the money for," she said. "You didn't feel useless when you used my credit to try to refinance. You didn't feel useless when I was painting walls alone, while you brought flowers to another apartment. You only felt useless when you were asked to be honest." Ryan's face flushed. "You don't understand love." Emily smiled faintly, very sadly. "I understand invoices, and tonight the invoices tell the story better than you do." Ryan's phone rang at that exact moment. The whole room looked down at the table where he had placed it. Natalie's name lit up. Not an unknown number. Not ends. "Read, Natalie." Ryan grabbed for it, but it was too late. Emily looked at the screen, then at him. "Answer it. No. Why? She's just a coworker having financial trouble." Ryan declined the call. 3 seconds later, a message appeared on the lock screen. Did she sign? We can't keep paying both places if you don't move this forward. Emily did not need to say more. The room had read it. Diane sat down, as if her legs could no longer hold her. A neighbor quietly set down her glass. Mark looked at Ryan, as if he no longer recognized him. Ryan held the phone, his hand clenched white. Emily spoke slowly. Natalie wasn't waiting for you to leave me. She was waiting for me to sign the papers that would pay for the life you promised her. The front door opened because someone arrived late, but it was not a guest. Natalie Reed walked in wearing a cream-colored coat, her hair tied low, holding a small gift bag. Maybe Ryan had told her this was only a gathering, that Emily knew nothing, that he would talk to her soon. Natalie stopped as soon as she saw the silent room and the papers on the table. Her face changed very quickly, from surprise to calculation. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't realize this was a family thing." Emily looked at the cream-colored coat, the very coat she had once seen on the video call. Ryan stepped forward. "Natalie, go," but Emily spoke first. "No. Stay. You're already part of the budget." Natalie looked at her, lips pressed together. "Emily, I know this looks bad, but Ryan told me the two of you were basically separated." Emily placed the screenshot of Natalie's old comment on the table. "Then why did you comment under a photo of my house? Must be nice to have someone else build it first." Natalie fell silent. "Why did you ask whether I had signed the contractor payment yet?" Natalie glanced at Ryan, and that look said more than words. The two stories Ryan had told two women had just collided in the living room. Emily had painted herself. Natalie tried to keep her voice steady. "I didn't know that money was yours." Emily looked at her. "You knew enough to call me she. You knew enough to ask whether I had signed. You knew enough to understand that your apartment was being kept alive by money-labeled renovation." Natalie flushed. "Ryan said he had rights to the house, that it was his money too." Emily nodded. "Yes, he has legal rights to a property he didn't pay for with honesty. That is what the lawyers will handle." Ryan spun toward her. Lawyers? For the first time that night, he was truly afraid. Not afraid of embarrassment, afraid of losing control. Emily took another smaller envelope from the drawer. "You wanted me to sign refinance papers. I did sign a few things today, just not yours." Ryan stared at the envelope as if it were alive. "What did you do?" "Protected what I built." Her voice was not loud, not triumphant. "Just clear. The divorce filing is being prepared. The documentation of misdirected funds has been sent to my lawyer. I am not signing the home equity line. I am not leaving this house, and you will not use another dollar from this property to pay for Natalie's apartment." Ryan shifted from anger to pleading so quickly, the room almost seemed dizzy. "Emily, please. We can fix this. I was confused. I was under pressure. The house, the money, everything." "Oh, which part can we fix?" she asked. "The affair, the lease, or the fact that you used my money to buy a lamp for her living room?" He stepped closer, his voice breaking just enough. "I love you." Emily looked at him for a long time. In that sentence, she heard 14 years. The day he proposed, the night they ate instant noodles when they were newly married, the 2 miscarriages, and the way he had lain beside her in silence, because he did not know what to say. The Christmas seasons, the road trips, the old photograph. Love does not die cleanly in one night. It is simply dragged into the light, where you can see how long it has been eaten through from the inside. "Maybe you loved me once," she said, "but you loved the life you could take from me more." Ryan reached out as if to touch her. She stepped back. It was a small step, but it was the greatest distance there had ever been between them. The evening did not end with a huge scream, but with an ashamed unraveling. Guests left in small groups, avoiding Ryan's eyes. Diane cried in the dining room, angry at her son, and also angry at Emily for not keeping everything private. Natalie left first, her face stiff, without saying goodbye to anyone. Ryan stood in the living room, among half-finished glasses of champagne and trays of cold food, like a man who had just watched the backdrop of his stage get torn down. Before he left, he turned back to Emily, his voice so low only she could hear. "You're going to regret doing this." Emily was gathering the papers into the folder. She did not look at him right away. "No, Ryan, I regret signing too many things before I looked closely." His face went pale. Then he left. The front door closed, making the newly painted wall tremble slightly. After that, there was no radiant victory, no scene where Emily stood in the middle of the house, breathed out, and sunlight poured in like a movie. That night, after everyone had gone, she sat on the kitchen floor, her back against the new cabinets, her shoes still on, her hands smelling of paper and champagne. Her mother sat beside her, not hugging her right away, only placing an old hand over hers. "Do you want me to stay?" Emily looked around the beautiful kitchen. Bright stone, warm lights, clean walls. The whole house had finally come close to the design inside her head. And that was exactly why it hurt. Yes, she said, her voice small as a child. Her mother nodded. She did not say everything would be all right. People who had lived long enough knew that sometimes those words were an insult. She only sat there with her daughter in the dream house that had just become a crime scene. The following weeks were banks, lawyers, emails, statements, property appraisals, cold phone calls with the realtor, angry texts from Ryan, and unsolicited advice from relatives. Ryan tried to build the story that Emily was controlling, that he had made mistakes because he had been pushed to the margins, that the gathering had been a cruel ambush. But paperwork did what emotions could not. It stood still. The lease did not cry. Bank statements did not rage. The timeline was not jealous. Once Ryan's family saw the amounts, the dates, the signatures, their defenses grew shorter. Diane called Emily once and said, "Even if Ryan was wrong, you didn't have to destroy him in front of everyone." Emily replied, "I didn't destroy him. I turned on the lights." After that, Diane did not call again. Natalie disappeared from social media for a while. The Meridian apartment became a real burden. Once Ryan could no longer cover it with cash hidden inside the renovation. A mutual friend said Ryan moved there for a few weeks, then left after Natalie needed space. Emily heard it and felt no joy. Only a gray kind of exhaustion. Illusions, once the money runs out, often show their true shape very quickly. Ryan still tried to meet her privately. One evening, he came to the dream house while she was planting lavender in the backyard. The house was still under temporary dispute, but she was allowed to remain there on her lawyer's advice. He stood by the fence looking thinner, his beard not fully shaved. "I'm not with Natalie anymore," he said. Emily kept packing soil around the plant roots. "That is not information I need. I lost everything." She stood upright, dirt on her hands. "No, you lost it." He looked at the house behind her. "Are you going to keep it?" "I don't know yet. It's ours." Emily looked at him. "No, it was my dream that you stood in for the photo." Ryan blinked as if slapped. "You're so cold." She looked down at her hands, black soil caught beneath her nails, remembering the nights she painted walls alone, the spreadsheets, the withdrawals from her 401. The invoices redirected elsewhere, then looked back at the man in front of her. "No, I just don't warm your lies anymore." He stood there a little longer, perhaps waiting for her to soften. She did not. Eventually, he left. The biggest question was not whether there would be a divorce. That was already clear. Question was who the house finally belonged to, and whether Emily could bear to stay in it. Some days she wanted to sell it immediately, put up the sign, wash her hands of it, leave the place where every corner held another layer of pain. The living room reminded her of the public exposure. The kitchen reminded her of the lease. The back window reminded her of all the nights Ryan had said, "Looks great, babe," while he was downtown. But on other days, she came downstairs in the early morning, saw the sunlight touch the countertop, heard coffee dripping into the pot, and realized the house was not only Ryan. It held parts of her he could not take. The warm beige wall was her hand. Kitchen island was her long nights revising the drawings. The backyard was her plan. The money was her sweat. If she sold it immediately just to run from the memory of Ryan, would that mean he still got to decide what it meant? A few months later, the temporary legal agreement allowed Emily to keep the house by restructuring the loan under her name, with the property offset calculated around her personal contributions, and the evidence of Ryan's misdirected transfer. It was not perfect. Real-life justice is rarely beautiful. She still lost money, still lost months, still lost trust. Ryan did not go to prison, did not completely collapse, was not rejected by the whole world the way stories like to make people believe life has order. He only had to pay part of it back, lost the house, lost the image of the decent husband, and had to live with the fact that many people now knew his story had dates, signatures, and a downtown apartment. Emily learned to accept that sometimes the best outcome is not being repaid. Sometimes it is simply not being taken from any further. The house was finished by late spring. No more paint cans, no more protective paper over the floors. Kitchen island shone in the morning light, the stone cold and smooth beneath Emily's hand. She changed the color of the office Ryan had chosen, from dark gray to pale blue. She sold the leather chair he liked. She took down the backyard string lights because they reminded her of the gathering, replacing them with two large planters and a small wooden table. She planted lavender, rosemary, basil. Alone, not as a bold declaration, only because she wanted the backyard to smell alive. On the first morning after everything was finished, she made coffee, stood in the kitchen, and looked out at the yard. The house was quiet, no Ryan calling from the living room, no phone lighting up face down. No, we did it. Only her, the sound of the coffee maker, the light, and an emptiness too large to call peace. She had once thought a dream house was where a marriage proved it had survived enough years. Now she understood that a house proves nothing about love. People can lie inside a beautiful kitchen. They can betray under a roof with both names on the mortgage. They can use words like future, teamwork, and hours, while quietly signing a lease somewhere else. A house is only material. Wood, paint, stone, glass, debt, signatures. What makes it a home is not the person standing in the housewarming photo, but the person who is truly present when no one is applauding. One afternoon, Emily received the last message from Ryan that mattered. "I hope you're happy in the house you took from me." She was sitting on the back porch, holding pruning shears and cutting dry lavender stems. She read the message, then looked at the house he said she had taken from him, the house he had tried to use as property, disguise, funding source, stage, and proof of false love. She typed one sentence, then deleted it, typed another, then deleted that too. In the end, she did not answer, not because she had nothing to say, but because some people see every answer as a door back into your life. Emily placed the phone face down on the table. Wind moved through the new fence, carrying the smell of damp soil and lavender. She took a sip of coffee that had gone cold. That night, she walked through each room before going to bed, not checking like someone afraid, but like someone learning a place again. The living room was still a little empty because she had not bought enough furniture. The kitchen was clean, the island reflecting the light. The pale blue office door stood slightly open, and on the desk was a new financial folder, this time with only her name on it. In the bedroom, she had placed a reading chair by the window, where Ryan had once wanted a large TV. She turned off the light and stood in the dark for a few seconds. She did not feel healed. She did not feel weightless. She did not feel that life was fair. But she felt herself standing. And sometimes, after a betrayal built out of invoices and promises, standing is a kind of truth. Emily had paid for their dream house. Ryan had tried to use it to build a life with someone else. But in the end, the only thing he truly built was the evidence that destroyed him. And the house, after all the layers of paint, wood dust, signatures, tears, and long sleepless nights, was no longer our dream house. It was no longer a shared dream, and it was not a clean victory. It was a quieter place, colder, truer, where Emily came downstairs each morning, placed her hand on the stone she had chosen, and remembered that love can blind a person for a very long time, but paperwork does not know how to lie.